G'day, watch this.
Coal seam gas, ladies and gentlemen, I've got to it. It's a hell of a challenge. The big problem in Queensland has set a precedent for the rest of Australia. I chaired the inquiry. We came to a conclusion which Barry O'Farrell recognises, that if you're driving in a fog, you turn your lights on and slow down. There will be no-go zones. The wine growing areas are sure to be one if the fact that the states are close enough to broke to be able to manage this. It's a big problem. Queensland is actually close to insolvency. And so Anna Bligh rang me up and blew the bloody tripe out of me after we put out this report. And I said, "You haven't read the report. What are you going on about?" "Oh, well, I haven't had time, but I've heard about it." I said, "You haven't even read your own advice. The government's own legal advice, which I had, and scientific advice, was don't do what they've done." I mean, so they issued licences to Santos. Santos, I have to say, have been reasonably sensible corporate citizens and got rid of Eastern Star Gas and that. I mean, John Anderson did all right out of that. Because they weren't good corporate citizens. You've got a whole lot of cowboys in the industry who go out and assess an area and then, like Mr Ian McDonald and Mr Eddie O'Beid, you sell the rights to it to someone else to produce it, depending on how you get the rights, mind you. And so I'm not alleging any impropriety. Santos in Queensland are fortunate enough, more by luck than any other way, to have a tenement which is only going to produce 700,000 tonnes of salt as a byproduct. To his credit, James Baldwin put his career on the line when he said, "Well, Bill, in the committee on the Hansard, we are prepared to be told where we can go and where we can't go. Just tell us and we'll go and do it." And you are right. They are holding New South Wales to ransom because of the gas. There's plenty of gas out in the middle of Australia. It's just too far from the bloody market as they see it. The freight factor is what's going to kill them. Bear in mind, if we hadn't have got on to coal seam gas, they would have had to bring coal seam gas to Sydney from the northwest shelf, which would have been a development corridor. So he put his job on the line and he eventually got his board to agree to what he said. Origin in Queensland have a tenement that's going to produce 4 million tonnes of salt as a byproduct, over 30 to 35 years, the life of the tenement. British Gas have got a similar one, 4 million tonnes. It's about 20 million tonnes of salt that's going to come to the surface. The lower the grade of the seam, the more water you bring to the surface. And the more water you bring to the surface, the more salt you bring to the surface. And sure, I mean, you might have to legalise, keep marijuana illegal and grow marijuana to be able to afford the water that they're going to desal, but to use in agriculture. But and sure, you can do it. So I put it to them in the inquiry. I said, "All right, so what are we going to do with this salt? Because there's no known commercial use for it, even though there are companies working on finding a use for it in glass and the aluminium industry, which is going to shut down by the look of it." And they said, "Well, we're going to store it in a safe storage," right? The best is yet to come. There's nothing like putting a spear through the heart of someone who thinks they know. I said, "All right, do you realise what sort of volumes you're dealing with?" Because I like figures. You never lose an argument if you speak the language of figures. I said, "Salt stores at 806 kilograms per cubic metre. It stacks at 32 degrees, which is a lower stack than wheat. Wheat's at 37. I said, "So if you're going to store 4 million tonnes of salt, and you had a stack that was 50 metres wide and 30 metres high, it would be 11 kilometres long. But because it's at 32 degrees, you're going to have a stack of salt that is 50 metres wide, 30 metres high and 27 kilometres long." I said, "Where in God's name are you going to store that? That is the most toxic substance to agriculture. Where are you going to get approval in a safe environment to store that?" And our committee said it can't be in the Murray-Darling Basin. The state government hasn't given any thought to this. Then that's the salt problem. And I have to say there are areas with higher grade, like Camden out here, where those wells are only going to produce 1,000 tonnes of saline water a week. That's the difference in the grade of the seam. And you could cart that away and dump it at Bondi, I guess. But these are serious problems, and all the problems of the coal seam gas are mainly underground. No one wants to talk about it. The management of the above ground, you could actually manage it, and if you're on a 400 metre grid, it's a pain in the arse. If you're on what we call prime agricultural land, which is flat and black, prime agricultural land, the best agricultural land for production is actually at Wollongbean, which is undulating volcanic soils, red soils. So Barnaby Joyce and these characters thought prime was black and flat, but just let's stay with black and flat. If you put a gravel road down the middle of a floodplain and you get 6 or 8 inches of rain, you cause a huge gouge. You can't have stuff on 400 and 800 metre grids, these pipelines with a road going along each one. You fly from bloody Los Angeles to Miami or somewhere, look out on your left halfway across there and you think, God, what's that giant monopoly board? It's coal seam gas for as far as you can see on these 400 metre grids, and that's mainly shale over there. So that's the problem, which everyone's got to wake up to, above ground. I mean, some of my colleagues on both sides said, oh, we'll fix them up, we'll pay them enough money, that'll shut them up. That's not going to fix the problem, though. We discovered, for instance, the Springbok aquifer was contaminating the Walloon coal measure. And a lot of the local bores, stock and domestic, were disappearing. So I said to them, and that Wilkinson, who's the head of the, whatever it is, the association that lobbies for them, I said, all right, so I've got 500 cows watering on a bore, and you send me a cheque in the mail. That won't help the cows get a drink. Oh, they said, we would have a make good obligation. I said, how are you going to make good a contaminated bore or a dewatered bore? Oh, we'd have to find a way. They don't know. And so what the state government has done, they've issued licences to Santos and British Gas, and on the basis of the fact that they then got the information in about the troubles, instead of having, proceed with caution, like the new government's biosecurity with apples and things, they just say, oh, we'll fix it up when we get the problem instead of preventing the problem. They let Origin go ahead, and I think Origin may be reconsidering their position on this, on the basis of not that the science proved they could do what they're doing, but on the basis that they'd issued the other two with licences to go ahead. No science at all. So it is a serious problem. The CSiro gave us evidence on the record, on the Hansard. I just can be quite rude, crude and unattractive at times. They gave us this presentation, which was wonderful. When it was finished, I congratulated them and said it was bullshit. I said, and you're the guys in charge of water for the CSiro? Yes, we are. I said, now tell me the truth. Because as I describe it, the aquifers have a natural pressure balance underground. We don't understand it. We don't even understand the recharge of the Great Artesian Basin. And the Great Artesian Basin intersects at Gunnedah with the Namoy Aquifer, and we don't even understand that. And I chaired the bloody mining under the floodplain thing there at Gunnedah, and if I had 3 hours, I'd take you through all that as well. And so the contamination of the aquifer is something they don't understand. And if you've got 2 big fat blokes leaning against a thin fibro wall, and one bloke walks away from the wall, the other bloke falls through the wall. It's the same thing when you alter unnaturally the pressures in the aquifers underneath. There are low geological fault lines which allows, but when it's naturally pressured, it all balances. When you take the pressure out of one, that finds you change the behaviour of the aquifer. The CSiro eventually in that hearing said, oh, well, Senator, yes, we don't know the real answer, but it could take 300 to 400 years to rebalance the aquifers for 35 years of coal seam extraction. 300 to 400 years to fix the problem. So I think that we ought to have the opportunity for coal seam gas, but we also ought to have the opportunity to understand the challenge that this presents to the global food task, because it's one of many challenges. And the global energy task has many solutions. The most sensible solution in terms of other than solar and wave power, etc., and turning the bloody lights off. Why they need all these lights on in here, I wouldn't know. The most sensible solution would be things like thorium. Hands up all those people who know what thorium is. Thorium, Australia has, and India has, the world's largest supply. Thorium is a nuclear power substance which doesn't have a plutonium byproduct. And a nuclear reactor based on thorium, if something goes wrong, you just go to the switch and turn it off. There's no meltdown. India is about 3 or 4 years off commercialisation of this. Yep, it would take about, I think about a couple of billion for us to overcome the scientific, triggering the event. You obviously know what I'm talking about. We wasted 4 billion on the BER outside the real cost of doing the BER. It was absolutely wasted. Half that money would have given us a thorium industry. Australia has the world's largest supply of thorium. The reason we don't develop it is that I chaired the bloody peak oil thing. The reason they want to exhaust the supply to get the most out of it. The uranium might want to do the same. By the way, the extension of the mine at the Olympic Dam, which is now in doubt, to extend that mine, they're actually going to have to de-water an entire aquifer to get at the uranium. They don't talk about that. So I mean, there are solutions, but with coal seam gas, it is doable. Santos are holding New South Wales to ransom because they have a contract which expires in 2014 to supply gas out of South Australia into New South Wales. So there's some urgency for AGL and others. There's plenty more gas out there. It's just that they know if we go to world parity pricing originally, they were going to get a big quid out of it because the price of your gas at home was going to at least double when coal seam gas came into the system. Well, now the United States has got shale gas in surplus. The price is coming back, which is why they're starting to dampen the expectations. And, you know, and that stuff you read about at Gladstone Harbour is actually all true. They've contaminated the bloody harbour. I mean, I know all about Gladstone. I did industrial development up there in 1982. My head tenant was Camalco, by the way. That's how you get 7 kids to make a living off one farm. So, I mean, these problems, there are layers of problems which I haven't got time to take you through today and which are hard to explain on a news grab. But for instance, the legal liability for things going wrong in the coal seam gas industry close off when the person closes off the well. And the well might only last 5 years. When they seal the well, they get their bond back. The committee that I chaired said there should be some continuing permanent bond system, like a sovereign wealth fund, I suppose, for Australia, so that when things go wrong, to give you an idea how things can go wrong, in the United States, in a place called Bakersfield County, Bakersfield are suing a miner over there for $2 billion because of the contamination in an oil shale arrangement of the entire water for that municipality. And so 80 years after some of these shale gas wells, you know, they eventually collapse. You've seen the concrete falling off some of these bloody buildings in eastern Sydney here, concrete cancer. Well, under the ground, the same thing happens, and the salt gets into the concrete and rusts and it falls apart, and one aquifer goes to another, and the next thing you've got bloody seawater. You're drinking it. So these are serious problems which the government in Queensland and New South Wales hasn't thought through. They are serious long-term problems, and I have to say I am dead set opposed to shutting the farmers up with a cheque, because in 50 or 100 years' time, and I'm a bloody farmer, in 50 or 100 years' time they're going to say, how in God's name did those bloody wooden-head deadheads allow that to happen? I mean, we do have a serious energy task.